Marcus Chen sat in the corner of his small repair shop, staring at the notice in his hands. The bold red letters seemed to mock him. Eviction notice in 30 days. His mechanical arm, a crude replacement he'd built himself after losing his real one in the war, creaked as he crumpled the paper. The shop around him was a mess of broken starship parts, half-finished repairs and tools scattered everywhere. Once this place had been his pride and joy. Now it felt like a tomb. The war with the Zephyrian Empire had ended 3 years ago, but for Marcus the battle never stopped. Every night he still heard the screams of his unit as their transport exploded. Every morning he woke up reaching for an arm that wasn't there anymore. Nobody wanted to hire a broken veteran. The fancy repair shops in the city center had clean facilities and whole mechanics. Who would trust their expensive ships to a one-armed man working out of a garage in the slums? Marcus had tried to compete, but his clients kept leaving for better options. Now he barely had enough credits to buy food, let alone pay rent. Rain started pattering against the dirty windows of his shop. The sound reminded him of laser fire, and he flinched. His mechanical fingers drummed nervously against his workbench, creating a hollow metallic rhythm. The prosthetic was functional but clumsy. He'd built it from salvage parts because he couldn't afford a proper replacement. It got the job done mostly, but it would never be as good as what he'd lost. A soft scratching sound came from outside. Marcus ignored it at first, thinking it was just debris blown by the wind. But the sound continued, becoming more insistent. It was followed by what sounded almost like crying. Marcus frowned and looked toward the back door of his shop. The scratching grew louder, accompanied by small whimpering noises. Against his better judgment, Marcus stood up and walked to the door. His mechanical hand hesitated over the lock. In this part of the city, opening your door to strange sounds usually meant trouble, but something about the crying tugged at what was left of his heart. He opened the door and looked down. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Crouched against his doorstep was a creature no bigger than a house cat, but it definitely wasn't from Earth. Its body was covered in scales that shifted color from deep blue to silver in the dim light. Small wings sprouted from its back, too tiny for flight but clearly present. Its head was elongated like a lizard's, but its eyes were large and expressive, filled with tears that sparkled like liquid starlight. "What the hell?" Marcus muttered, taking a step back. The creature looked up at him and made a sound that was unmistakably a sob. It was injured, he realized. One of its wings hung at an odd angle, and there were scratches along its side. Blood that looked almost purple in the dim light oozed from its wounds. Marcus had never seen anything like it. During the war, he'd encountered dozens of alien species, but this was something new. It looked like the dragons from old Earth fairy tales, except real and very much in pain. The creature tried to stand but collapsed, its tiny claws scraping against the metal grating. For a moment, Marcus just stared. His first instinct was to close the door and pretend he'd never seen anything. He had enough problems without adding a mysterious alien creature to the mix. But as he started to step back, the creature looked up at him again, and something in its eyes stopped him cold. He'd seen that look before. It was the same expression he'd seen in the mirror every morning for the past 3 years. Pure, desperate hopelessness. The look of someone who had given up on everything except the faint possibility that maybe, just maybe, someone might care enough to help. "Damn it," Marcus whispered. He knelt down slowly, trying not to startle the creature. Up close, he could see more details. Its scales were beautiful, with an iridescent quality that made them shimmer even in the poor light. Its claws were sharp but small, clearly not meant for fighting. This was a baby, he realized. A hatchling. "Hey there, little guy," Marcus said softly. "You're hurt pretty bad, aren't you?" The creature tilted its head, studying him with those impossibly expressive eyes. It made a soft chirping sound, almost like a question. Marcus wasn't sure if it understood him, but it didn't seem afraid anymore. Very carefully, Marcus reached out with his real hand. The creature flinched at first, then seemed to realize he meant no harm. It allowed him to gently scoop it up, though it whimpered when he accidentally jostled its injured wing. Sorry, Marcus murmured, adjusting his grip. The creature was surprisingly warm, and he could feel its rapid heartbeat against his palm. "Let's get you inside and see what we can do about those wounds." He carried the creature into his shop and set it down gently on his cleanest workbench. Under the bright work lights, he could see the extent of its injuries. The wing was definitely broken, and the scratches looked like they came from claws or teeth. Something had attacked this little thing. Marcus had basic medical supplies for treating his own injuries, but he wasn't sure if they would work on an alien. Still, he had to try. As he gathered antiseptic and bandages, the creature watched him with curious eyes, no longer crying but still obviously in pain. "I don't know what you are or where you came from," Marcus said as he began cleaning the wounds. The creature winced but didn't try to escape. "But you picked the right doorstep to collapse on. I might not be much of a mechanic anymore, but I know how to patch things up." The antiseptic didn't seem to harm the creature, which was a relief. Marcus worked as gently as he could, using his mechanical hand to hold supplies while his real hand did the delicate work. For the first time in months, he felt like he was doing something useful, something that mattered. As he worked, Marcus found himself talking to the creature, explaining what he was doing and apologizing when he caused pain. The little dragon seemed to listen, occasionally making soft sounds that almost sounded like responses. When Marcus finished bandaging the wing, the creature looked up at him and made a sound that he could have sworn was, "Thank you," in some alien language. "There," Marcus said, stepping back to admire his work. "That should hold for now. But you're going to need proper medical attention if you want that wing to heal right." The creature tried to stand and managed it this time, though it wobbled slightly. It looked around the shop with obvious curiosity, its head turning to take in all the strange human technology. Then it looked back at Marcus and did something that nearly broke his heart. It smiled. Marcus had never seen an alien smile before, but there was no mistaking the expression. The creature's eyes crinkled slightly and its mouth turned up in what was unmistakably a gesture of gratitude and affection. In that moment, something inside Marcus that had been frozen for 3 years began to thaw. He wasn't alone anymore. Marcus woke up to the sound of metal clinking against metal. For a moment, he forgot about his unusual guest and reached for the plasma pistol he kept under his pillow. 3 years of nightmares had trained him to wake up ready for battle. But then he remembered the little dragon and his hand relaxed. He found the creature on his workbench poking at a collection of small bolts and screws with obvious fascination. Its injured wing was still bandaged, but it seemed much more alert than the night before. When it saw Marcus approaching, it made a happy chirping sound and held up a bolt as if showing off a treasure. "Good morning to you too," Marcus said, rubbing his eyes. He'd slept on the old couch in his office, not wanting to leave the creature alone. His back ached from the uncomfortable position, but seeing the little dragon looking better made it worthwhile. The creature had organized the bolts by size and color, creating neat little rows across the workbench. Marcus stared in amazement. This wasn't random play. The organization showed intelligence, problem-solving ability. Whatever this creature was, it was smart. "You're a clever little guy, aren't you?" Marcus said, picking up one of the sorted bolts. The creature preened at the praise, its scales shifting to a brighter shade of blue. Marcus's stomach growled loudly, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. He looked at the creature, wondering what it might eat. Did it need meat, plants, some kind of alien food he couldn't provide? As if reading his thoughts, the creature pointed toward a half-eaten sandwich Marcus had left on his desk. When Marcus brought it over, the creature sniffed it carefully, then took a tiny bite of the bread. Its eyes widened with what looked like pleasant surprise, and it eagerly ate more. "So you like human food?" Marcus said, relieved. That's one problem solved. While the creature ate, Marcus examined its wing more carefully. The break was clean, and the swelling had gone down overnight. With proper care, it should heal completely, but that raised other questions. What was he going to do with an alien creature? Where did it come from? And more importantly, was anyone looking for it? The questions became more urgent when someone started pounding on his shop door. Marcus's blood ran cold as he heard multiple voices outside, speaking in a language he didn't recognize. The little dragon suddenly went rigid with fear, its scales turning a dark mottled gray. "Marcus Chen," a voice called out in accented English. "We know you are inside. Open this door immediately." Marcus grabbed the creature and quickly hid it under a tarp on one of his workbenches. "Stay quiet," he whispered. The dragon seemed to understand, curling up into a tight ball and remaining perfectly still. Marcus opened the door to find 3 aliens standing outside. They were tall and thin, with pale green skin and multiple arms. Their clothing suggested they were officials of some kind, and they carried weapons that hummed with contained energy. Marcus recognized the species from the war. These were Zephyrians, members of the same empire humanity had fought against. "Mr. Chen," the leader said, consulting a small device. I am Inspector Vex of the Zephyrian Immigration Authority. We have reports of stolen property in this area. We must search your establishment. Stolen property? Marcus tried to keep his voice steady. I don't know anything about that. This is just a repair shop. Perhaps, Vex said, pushing past Marcus into the shop. But our sensors detected traces of a very specific biosignature nearby, something that was taken from one of our research facilities. Marcus's heart pounded as the three Zephyrians spread out through his shop, scanning everything with their devices. Research facility. The little dragon wasn't just some lost pet. It was a test subject that had escaped from alien scientists. One of the other Zephyrians stopped near the workbench where Marcus had hidden the creature. His scanner beeped more rapidly, and he called out to Vex in their own language. Marcus stepped closer, trying to look casual while positioning himself between the alien and the hiding spot. Your scanner is picking up residual traces from my prosthetic, Marcus said, tapping his mechanical arm. Zephyrian alloys from the war. I salvaged parts from your wrecked ships. Vex looked at him suspiciously but nodded to his subordinate, who moved on to scan other areas. Marcus released a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The search continued for another 10 minutes, with the Zephyrians becoming increasingly frustrated. Their scanners kept picking up traces of what they were looking for, but they couldn't locate the source. Finally, Vex approached Marcus again. Mr. Chen, I will ask you directly, have you seen anything unusual in the past day? Any creature that does not belong on this world? Marcus met the alien's gaze steadily. During the war, he'd learned to lie to Zephyrians when necessary. It was a skill that had saved his life more than once. Inspector, I spend my days fixing broken machines. The only unusual thing I've seen lately is my rent notice. Vex studied him for a long moment, then gestured to his team. They gathered their equipment and headed for the door. But before leaving, Vex turned back to Marcus. The creature we seek is very valuable to our research. It is also very dangerous if not properly contained. If you encounter it, do not attempt to approach it. Contact us immediately. He handed Marcus a communication device. There is a substantial reward for its return. After the Zephyrians left, Marcus waited several minutes before uncovering the little dragon. It was trembling, its scales still that fearful gray color. When it saw him, it made a soft, mournful sound and pressed against his hand. Research facility, Marcus muttered, gently stroking the creature's scales. They were experimenting on you, weren't they? The dragon looked up at him with those expressive eyes, and Marcus saw a depth of pain there that went beyond physical injury. This creature had been hurt in ways that had nothing to do with its broken wing. Marcus thought about the reward Vex had mentioned. A substantial amount of credits could solve all his problems. He could pay his rent, upgrade his equipment, maybe even afford a proper prosthetic. All he had to do was make one call. But as he looked at the trusting face of the little dragon, Marcus knew he couldn't do it. This creature had come to him for help, and he wasn't going to betray that trust. Not for money, not for anything. They're not getting you back, he said firmly. I don't know what they did to you, but it's over now. The dragon seemed to understand. Its scales gradually shifted back to their normal blue-silver color, and it nuzzled against Marcus's real hand. For the first time since losing his arm, Marcus felt like he had a purpose again. But keeping the dragon safe wouldn't be easy. The Zephyrians would be back, and next time they might bring better scanners. Marcus needed to find a way to hide the creature's biosignature permanently, or find somewhere else for it to go. As if sensing his thoughts, the dragon looked around the shop, then back at Marcus. It made a series of soft sounds, almost like it was trying to communicate something specific. Marcus wished he could understand what it was trying to say. Then the dragon did something unexpected. It walked over to Marcus's computer terminal and pointed at the screen with one small claw. When Marcus activated the computer, the dragon watched the startup sequence with obvious recognition. You understand technology, Marcus said, amazed. That's how you organize my bolts. You can see patterns, logical systems. The dragon chirped excitedly and pointed at different parts of the computer. Marcus pulled up a basic drawing program, and the dragon immediately began using its claw to trace shapes on the screen. The first shape looked like a star map. The second looked like a ship. You're trying to tell me where you came from, Marcus realized, or where you need to go. The dragon nodded enthusiastically, then drew what looked like more of its own species. It wasn't alone in the universe. Somewhere out there were others like it. Marcus studied the crude star map, his mind racing. If he could figure out where the dragon belonged, maybe he could find a way to get it home. But that would require resources he didn't have, and knowledge he'd need to acquire. For the first time in years, Marcus felt excited about a challenge. He had a mission now, a reason to get up in the morning beyond just surviving another day. "All right, little guy," he said, gently picking up the dragon. "If you want to go home, we're going to need help. And I know just the person to ask." Dr. Sarah Kim's laboratory looked like controlled chaos. Holographic displays floated throughout the room showing star charts, biological diagrams, and streams of data that changed faster than the human eye could follow. Sarah herself sat at the center of it all. Her gray hair pulled back in a practical ponytail as she studied a genetic sequence on her main screen. Marcus hesitated at the entrance to her lab, the little dragon hidden inside a modified tool bag slung over his shoulder. Sarah was brilliant, one of the top xenobiologists on Earth, but she was also unpredictable. During the war, she'd been the one who helped humanity understand alien technology well enough to fight back. After the war, she'd become obsessed with peaceful contact and understanding between species. "Marcus Chen," Sarah said without turning around. "I was wondering when you'd show up. My sensors detected some very interesting bio-readings approaching the building." Marcus cursed silently. He'd forgotten how advanced Sarah's equipment was. "Hello, Sarah. I need your help with something." "I imagine you do." Sarah finally turned to face him, her sharp eyes immediately focusing on his bag. "Let me guess. You've stumbled across something the Zephyrians are looking for, and you're not sure what to do about it. How did you—" "They contacted me 3 hours ago, asking if I'd help them track down an escaped research subject. I told them I'd consider it." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "I lied, of course. Any creature that escapes Zephyrian research deserves whatever help I can provide." Marcus felt a wave of relief. Sarah might be eccentric, but her heart was in the right place. He carefully opened his bag, and the little dragon poked its head out, blinking in the bright laboratory lights. Sarah's reaction was immediate and dramatic. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as she stared at the creature. "Oh, my stars," she whispered. "Is that what I think it is?" "I don't know what you think it is," Marcus said, lifting the dragon out of the bag. "But it showed up at my shop injured and scared. The Zephyrians want it back." Sarah approached slowly, her scientific excitement barely contained. "Marcus, do you have any idea what you found?" "This is a Draknari hatchling. They're supposed to be extinct." The little dragon looked back and forth between them, seeming to sense the importance of the moment. When Sarah extended her hand, it sniffed carefully before allowing her to touch its scales. "Draknari," Marcus repeated. "I've never heard of them." Most people haven't. They were one of the first species the Zephyrians encountered when they began expanding their empire, about 200 years ago. According to the records, the Draknari were incredibly advanced. They had technology that could manipulate space and time itself. But they were also peaceful, preferring art and philosophy to warfare. Sarah's expression grew sad as she continued. The Zephyrians saw them as a threat because of their advanced technology. They launched what they called a preemptive defense action. In reality, it was genocide. They wiped out the entire Draknari civilization and claimed their worlds. Marcus felt sick. The little creature in his arms was the survivor of a massacre that had happened before humans even knew aliens existed. "So this is quite possibly the last of its kind," Sarah finished. "The Zephyrians must have found some preserved genetic material and tried to recreate the species. They probably wanted to study Draknari technology." The dragon seemed to understand they were talking about its people. It made a low, mournful sound and nuzzled against Marcus's chest. Marcus found himself holding the creature more protectively. "We have to help it," Marcus said. "There has to be something we can do." Sarah was already moving to her computer terminals, pulling up files and data streams. The Draknari were known for their ability to bond with other species. They could form telepathic connections that allowed them to share knowledge and emotions. If this little one is truly Draknari, it might already be trying to bond with you. Marcus thought about the strange sense of connection he'd felt with the creature, the way it seemed to understand him despite the language barrier. "What does that mean?" "It means you're probably the most important person in its life right now," Sarah said. "Draknari bonds are permanent and incredibly strong. If it's chosen you as its companion, it will never willingly leave your side." The implications of that hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd been thinking about finding the dragon's home, returning it to its own kind. But if Sarah was right, there was no home to return to. He was all it had. "There's something else," Sarah said, her voice filled with excitement. "The star map you showed me, the one it drew on your computer. I've been analyzing it, and I think I know where it leads." She brought up a holographic display showing a sector of space Marcus didn't recognize. "This system here, about 40 light-years from Earth. It was the Draknari homeworld before the Zephyrians destroyed it. But according to my research, not everything was lost." Marcus leaned forward, the dragon chittering with interest at the display. "What do you mean?" "The Draknari were master architects. They built their most important structures to survive anything, even planetary destruction. There are rumors that their great library still exists, hidden in the ruins of their homeworld. If that's true, it might contain the knowledge needed to restore their species. But there's only one of them," Marcus pointed out. "Even if we found this library, how could we bring back an entire species from a single individual?" Sarah smiled. "The Draknari were also master geneticists, but they used their abilities for preservation rather than war. If their library survived, it would contain genetic templates for their entire species. With the right technology, it might be possible to restore them." The dragon had been listening intently to their conversation, its head turning back and forth as if following every word. Now it chirped excitedly and pointed at the star map, then at itself. "It understands," Marcus said in amazement. "It knows what we're talking about." "Draknari mature quickly under stress," Sarah explained. "This hatchling has probably developed faster than normal due to the trauma it experienced. It's essentially a child, but with the intelligence of an adult." Marcus looked down at the creature in his arms, seeing it in a new light. This wasn't just a lost pet or even an intelligent animal. This was a person, the last survivor of an entire civilization, carrying the weight of its species' extinction on tiny shoulders. "What would we need to reach this library?" Marcus asked. Sarah's expression became serious. "A ship capable of long-range space travel, for starters. Something that could make the journey to Draknari space without being detected by Zephyrian patrols. We'd also need supplies, equipment for archaeological work, and probably a small crew of people we trust absolutely." "I don't have the credits for any of that," Marcus said. His heart sank as reality crashed back down on him. "I can barely afford to keep my shop open." "Credits might not be the biggest problem," Sarah said thoughtfully. "I know people who would fund an expedition like this, especially if they understood what we might find. The real problem is the Zephyrians. They'll be watching Earth for any sign of the hatchling. If they discover what we're planning..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The Zephyrians had fought a war with humanity over much less than this. If they learned that humans were trying to restore their greatest victims, the consequences would be catastrophic. The dragon made a soft sound and looked up at Marcus with those expressive eyes. In them, Marcus saw something he recognized. It was the same look he'd seen in the mirror for 3 years, the same expression the dragon had worn when he first found it. But now, for the first time, he also saw something else. Hope. "We'll figure it out," Marcus said, surprising himself with the determination in his voice. "We'll find a way to get you home and bring your people back. I promise." The dragon's scales shifted to a warm golden color and it nuzzled against his hand. Marcus felt that strange sense of connection grow stronger, and suddenly he could swear he heard a voice in his mind, speaking words he somehow understood despite never hearing the language before. "Thank you, friend heart. Together we will restore what was lost." Marcus looked at Sarah, who was staring at them both with wide eyes. "Did you hear that?" "I didn't hear anything," Sarah said slowly. "But I saw your expression change. Marcus, I think the bonding process has begun. That dragon isn't just trusting you with its life, it's sharing its mind with you." For the first time in 3 years, Marcus felt whole again. He had a purpose beyond just surviving. And he had a companion who understood what it meant to lose everything. Together, they were going to attempt something impossible. They were going to bring back the dead. Captain Elena Rodriguez looked exactly like someone who had spent the last 5 years running illegal cargo through Zephyrian space. Her dark hair was streaked with premature gray. Her left eye was cybernetic and scars covered the visible parts of her arms. But when she saw the little dragon perched on Marcus's shoulder, her hardened expression melted into something approaching wonder. "Sweet mother of space," she whispered. Sarah wasn't lying. "That's really a Draknari." They were meeting in the back room of a bar on the edge of the spaceport, surrounded by the constant noise of ships launching and landing. Marcus had been nervous about trusting another person with their secret, but Sarah insisted they needed Elena's help. She had a ship, experience with dangerous missions, and most importantly, she hated the Zephyrians almost as much as Marcus did. Elena lost her entire crew to a Zephyrian patrol 2 years ago, Sarah explained quietly. She's been looking for a way to hit back ever since. Elena sat down across from them, her cybernetic eye whirring softly as it focused on the dragon. What's its name? Marcus realized he'd never thought to ask. He looked at the dragon, who had been quietly listening to their conversation. Do you have a name? The dragon tilted its head thoughtfully, then made a series of musical sounds that reminded Marcus of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. But in his mind, through their growing bond, he heard something different. Zephyr, Marcus said. Its name is Zephyr. Ironic, Elena said with a bitter smile. Named after the people who killed its species. No, Marcus said, understanding flooding through him as Zephyr shared more of its thoughts. Not after the Zephyrians. It's an old Draknari word. It means wind that brings change. Zephyr was named for what it represents. Hope for the future. Elena leaned back in her chair, studying them both carefully. Sarah told me what you're planning. It's insane, you know that? 40 light years into hostile territory, to a dead world that's probably crawling with Zephyrian archaeological teams. Probably, Marcus agreed, but it's the only chance Zephyr's people have. And what makes you think this library even exists? It could just be a myth. Zephyr chirped softly and pointed at Sarah's tablet, which showed the star charts they'd been studying. When Sarah activated the display, Zephyr began making precise gestures indicating specific locations on the map. Each gesture was accompanied by a stream of images in Marcus's mind. Towering crystalline structures, vast halls filled with floating knowledge spheres, and archive chambers that stretched beyond the horizon. It remembers, Marcus said in amazement. Not personally, but through genetic memory. The Draknari encoded the location of their most important sites into their DNA. Even more reason for the Zephyrians to want it back, Elena pointed out. Do you have any idea what kind of technology might be hidden in that library? If they get their hands on it, they won't, Marcus said firmly. We're going to get there first. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. With what ship? My freighter, the Wandering Star, is fast, but she's not exactly equipped for deep space exploration. We'd need supplies for a round trip of at least 6 months, assuming we don't run into any problems. What kind of problems? Marcus asked. Zephyrian patrols, for starters. Space pirates who don't care about politics. Equipment failures in the middle of nowhere. And that's assuming we can even find what we're looking for once we get there. Sarah leaned forward. I've been working on that last problem. The foundation I work for has access to some very advanced archaeological equipment. Sensors that can detect artificial structures even under tons of rubble. If the library is there, we'll find it. And I can modify my ship for the journey, Elena said, warming to the idea despite her reservations. Upgrade the life support systems, install better shielding, maybe even add some defensive weapons. But it's going to cost credits. A lot of them. How much? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer would be more than he could afford. Elena named a figure that made Marcus's heart sink. It was 10 times more than he made in a good year, back when he had customers. There was no way he could raise that kind of money. I might have a solution, Sarah said carefully, but you're not going to like it. She pulled up a new display on her tablet showing what looked like a corporate logo. Titan Industries has been funding xenoarchaeological expeditions for the past few years. They're particularly interested in projects that might uncover advanced alien technology. Marcus recognized the name. Titan Industries was one of Earth's largest military contractors, the company that had built many of the weapons used in the war against the Zephyrians. Absolutely not. I'm not turning Zephyr over to weapons manufacturers. Not turning over, Sarah said quickly. Partnering with. They provide funding and equipment. We provide expertise and access to the site. They get first rights to any defensive technology we find, but everything else stays with us. And you trust them to honor that agreement? Elena asked skeptically. I trust them to be predictable, Sarah replied. Titan Industries wants to make money and protect Earth from future alien threats. As long as our goals align with theirs, we can work together. Zephyr had been listening to their conversation with growing agitation. Now it made a sharp distress sound and its scales shifted to a dark red color. Through their bond, Marcus felt its fear and anger. It doesn't like the idea, Marcus said. The Draknari were peaceful. The thought of their technology being used for war terrifies it. But it wants to restore its people, Sarah pointed out gently. Sometimes we have to make difficult choices to achieve our goals. Marcus looked down at Zephyr, who was trembling slightly on his shoulder. The little dragon looked up at him with those expressive eyes, and Marcus felt a wave of trust and love that nearly overwhelmed him. Whatever they decided, Zephyr would support him. What if we could limit what they get access to? Marcus asked. Only the most basic defensive technologies, nothing that could be used for offensive warfare. That might be acceptable, Elena said. Titan's primary concern is protecting Earth. If we can give them better shields and sensors, they might not care about weapons. Sarah was already pulling up contract templates on her tablet. I can draft an agreement that protects our interests while giving Titan what they need. But we'd have to be very careful about the wording. Marcus thought about his eviction notice sitting on his desk back at the shop. In a few weeks, he'd be homeless. Zephyr would be discovered and dragged back to some Zephyrian laboratory. The last hope of an entire species would die in a cage. Do it, he said finally. But I want guarantees. Zephyr's safety comes first, always. And if we find what we're looking for, if we can actually restore the Draknari, they get to decide what happens to their technology. Agreed, Sarah said, already working on the contract. Elena, how long would you need to prepare your ship? 3 weeks, maybe 4 if we want to do it right. I'll need to install the new equipment and find a crew I trust. What about a crew? Marcus asked. How many people are we talking about? Small team, Elena said. Pilot, engineer, archaeologist, maybe a security specialist. People who can keep their mouths shut and won't panic when things go wrong. I know some people, Sarah said. Researchers who've been blacklisted by the mainstream academic community for asking inconvenient questions about the war. They'd jump at the chance to be part of something like this. Zephyr chirped softly and nuzzled against Marcus's neck. Through their bond, he felt the dragon's growing excitement. For the first time since its escape, Zephyr had real hope that it might see its ancestral home. There's something else we need to consider, Elena said seriously. Once we launch, there's no turning back. The Zephyrians will figure out what we're doing eventually, and when they do, they'll send everything they have to stop us. This won't just be dangerous for us. It could mean war between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. The weight of that possibility settled over them like a heavy blanket. They weren't just risking their own lives. They were potentially risking the safety of billions of humans. The war never really ended, Marcus said quietly. It just went quiet for a while. The Zephyrians are still expanding, still conquering. Eventually, they'll decide humanity is too much of a threat and try to finish what they started. You think this might actually prevent a larger conflict? Elena asked. I think it might give us a chance, Marcus replied. If we can restore the Draknari, if we can prove that genocide isn't the only way to deal with differences, maybe we can change how things work in this galaxy. Sarah looked up from her tablet. The contract is ready for review. Are we really doing this? Marcus looked at each of them in turn, then down at Zephyr. The little dragon's scales had shifted to a hopeful blue-green color, and its eyes were bright with anticipation. We're doing this, Marcus said. We're going to bring the Draknari home. Elena raised an imaginary glass. To the most dangerous archaeological expedition in human history. To hope, Sarah added. Marcus gently stroked Zephyr's scales. To second chances. Through their bond, he felt Zephyr's response not in words but in pure emotion. Gratitude, love, and determination so fierce it took his breath away. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The wandering star dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that ran through every rivet and bolt in her hull. Marcus gripped his safety harness as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, making his stomach lurch. Beside him, Zephyr chirped nervously, its scales shifting to a worried gray color. Contact, Elena called from the pilot's seat. 3 Zephyrian patrol ships bearing 27 Mark V. They're moving to intercept. Through the bridge's main viewport, Marcus could see their destination, the dead world that had once been the Draknari homeworld. What had once been a blue-green paradise was now a brown and lifeless rock, its surface scarred by massive impact craters. The sight filled him with rage, but through his bond with Zephyr, he felt something even stronger. Grief so deep it threatened to overwhelm him. Sorry, little friend, Marcus whispered, gently stroking Zephyr's head. I know this is hard. Dr. James Parker, their archaeologist, was frantically working at his sensor station. I'm detecting massive artificial structures beneath the surface of the northern continent. The readings are incredible. Whatever's down there, it's huge. We need to get past those patrol ships first, Elena said grimly. Sarah, how's our stealth field holding up? Sarah was monitoring the ship's modified systems from the engineering station. Stable for now, but if they get close enough for active scans, they'll see right through it. The past month had been a whirlwind of preparation and narrow escapes. The Titan Industries funding had come through, allowing them to upgrade the Wandering Star with cutting-edge stealth technology and archaeological equipment. But it had also attracted attention. Zephyrian agents had tried to break into Sarah's lab twice, and Marcus's shop had been searched again by customs officials, who were obviously military intelligence. They'd launched from a private spaceport in the outer colonies, using false cargo manifests and forged identification codes. The journey had taken 3 weeks, following obscure hyperspace routes that added days to their travel time, but kept them away from major shipping lanes. Now they were here, and the Zephyrians were waiting for them. They know we're here, Elena said, watching her displays. The patrol ships are spreading out, trying to box us in. Can we outrun them? Marcus asked. Not with this much cargo, Elena replied. The archaeological equipment makes us too heavy for a speed run. Zephyr suddenly became very alert, its head turning toward the dead planet below. Through their bond, Marcus felt a surge of recognition and excitement. The little dragon chirped urgently and pointed at the main display. What is it? Marcus asked. Zephyr made a series of rapid chirps and trills, its scales shifting to bright gold. Images flooded Marcus's mind. Ancient defensive systems, sleeping guardians, technologies that had waited 2 centuries for the right activation signal. The planet's defenses, Marcus said in amazement. They're still active. Zephyr knows how to wake them up. That's impossible, Parker said, looking up from his sensors. The Zephyrians bombarded this world for months. Nothing could have survived that kind of destruction. Draknari engineering was beyond anything we understand, Sarah said excitedly. If anyone could build defenses that would survive planetary bombardment, it would be them. Elena's tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. What the hell? I'm reading energy signatures all over the planet. Something is powering up down there. On the main screen, the surface of the dead world began to change. Massive structures emerged from beneath the rubble, unfolding like mechanical flowers after a long winter. Ancient weapon platforms rose from hidden bunkers, their energy cores glowing with blue-white fire that had been banked for 200 years. The lead Zephyrian patrol ship suddenly veered away from its intercept course, its captain apparently recognizing the threat. But it was too late. Beams of coherent energy lanced out from the planet's surface, striking the Zephyrian ships with surgical precision. The patrol vessels' shields flared and failed, and their hulls began to buckle under the assault. Magnificent, Parker breathed. The Draknari built their defenses to last millennia. Through the bond, Marcus felt Zephyr's sadness. These weapons had been built to protect a living world, not to guard a graveyard. But they were the last guardians of a dead people, and they would fulfill their duty. 2 of the patrol ships managed to escape, jumping back into hyperspace before the defensive systems could destroy them. The third wasn't so lucky. Its engines failed and it crashed into the planet's surface in a ball of fire. Well, Elena said into the sudden silence, I guess we have permission to land. The Wandering Star descended through the planet's thin atmosphere, guided by navigation beacons that Zephyr somehow knew how to activate. They landed in what had once been a vast city, now reduced to rubble and twisted metal. But in the distance, Marcus could see the outline of something that had survived the bombardment, a massive crystalline structure that rose from the earth like a mountain of living glass. The Great Library, Zephyr said, the words appearing directly in Marcus's mind with perfect clarity. For the first time, the little dragon had spoken to him in human language, translated through their bond. Parker was practically vibrating with excitement as he gathered his equipment. The energy readings from that structure are off the charts. Whatever's in there, it's still active after all these years. They suited up in environmental gear and made their way across the devastated landscape. The gravity was lighter than Earth standard, making each step feel like a small leap. Around them, the remains of Draknari civilization lay scattered like broken dreams. Zephyr rode on Marcus's shoulder, its scales shifting through complex patterns of color that Marcus now recognized as emotional responses. The little dragon was remembering this place not as it was, but as it should have been. Green parks where children played, crystal spires that sang in harmony with the wind, art galleries where beings from across the galaxy came to marvel at Draknari creativity. The entrance to the great library was a doorway carved from a single piece of crystal, its surface covered with symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. As they approached, the symbols began to glow with soft blue light. "It's recognizing Zephyr," Sarah said in wonder. "The library is responding to its presence." Zephyr chirped softly and flew from Marcus's shoulder to the crystal door. The moment its claws touched the surface, the entrance began to open, revealing a corridor that stretched into darkness beyond. "After you," Elena said, checking her sidearm. "Try not to trigger any ancient death traps." They entered the library together, their lights casting eerie shadows on walls covered with more of the shifting symbols. The air inside was clean and breathable, maintained by systems that had operated flawlessly for 2 centuries. The main chamber of the library was so vast that their lights couldn't reach the far walls. Floating platforms hung in the air at various levels, each one supporting crystalline data storage devices that glowed with inner light. In the center of the chamber stood a pillar of pure white crystal that pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm like a heartbeat. "The Central Archive," Zephyr said through Marcus. "It contains everything. All our history, all our knowledge, all our dreams." Parker was setting up his scanning equipment with trembling hands. "The data density in those crystals is beyond anything we've ever seen. Each one could contain the equivalent of Earth's entire internet. But how do we access it?" Sarah asked. "We don't have Draknari interface technology." Zephyr looked up at Marcus with those expressive eyes, and suddenly Marcus understood. "We don't need their technology. We have something better." He walked to the central pillar and placed his hand against its surface. The moment skin touched crystal, the library came alive. Light flowed through the chamber like liquid starlight. And suddenly the air was filled with holographic displays showing the complete history of the Draknari civilization. Marcus saw them as they had been, tall, graceful beings with scales that reflected their emotions, wings that could carry them between the stars, and minds that sought beauty and knowledge above all else. He saw their great works of art, their philosophical debates, their scientific discoveries that unlocked the secrets of space and time, and he saw their end, the Zephyrian ships appearing in their skies, the desperate defense, the systematic destruction of everything they had built. But even in their final moments, the Draknari had hoped. They had hidden their greatest treasures, preserved their genetic legacy, and waited for someone to find them. "The genetic templates," Zephyr said, its mental voice filled with wonder. "They're all here. Every Draknari who ever lived, preserved in perfect detail." Sarah was frantically taking readings with her equipment. "Marcus, this is incredible. The genetic data is stored in quantum matrices that we're only beginning to understand. With this information, we could restore not just the Draknari, but any species that's been lost to extinction." "How many?" Marcus asked. "All of them," Zephyr replied. "Every egg that would have hatched, every child that would have been born. My people can live again." Parker was staring at the historical displays with tears in his eyes. "This changes everything. Not just for the Draknari, but for our understanding of life itself. The knowledge in this library could advance human science by thousands of years." Elena's voice crackled over the comm. Marcus felt the change beginning deep in his bones. The restoration matrix had accepted him as a host, and now Draknari genetic material was integrating with his human DNA in ways that should have been impossible. But Draknari science had always dealt in impossibilities, and their final gift to the galaxy was the knowledge of how to bridge the gaps between species. Around him, the great library pulsed with new purpose. Holographic displays showed the genetic patterns being woven together, human and Draknari traits combining in perfect harmony. Marcus watched in fascination as his own genetic code was enhanced rather than replaced, gaining new capabilities while remaining fundamentally human. "Incredible," Sarah breathed, monitoring the process with her scanners. "The integration is seamless. It's not changing you, Marcus. It's adding to you." Through his bond with Zephyr, Marcus could feel the little dragon's excitement and gratitude. But there was something else now. A new sensation he'd never experienced before. He was becoming aware of life in ways that went beyond the physical world. Energy patterns, genetic blueprints, the fundamental structures that bound all living things together. "I can feel them," Marcus said in wonder. The Draknari who will be born. They're not just genetic templates anymore. They're waiting. Parker was frantically downloading what data he could from the library's outer archives. The Zephyrian fleet will be here in 4 hours. We need to finish this and get out of here. No, Marcus said, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. We're not running anymore. Elena's voice crackled over the comm. Marcus, that's a full battle fleet out there. 50 ships, maybe more. The planetary defenses won't be enough to stop them. The defenses aren't the only protection this world has, Marcus replied. Through his enhanced awareness, he could sense the true extent of what the Draknari had left behind. Zephyr, show them! The little dragon flew to another section of the central pillar and touched its surface with one claw. Immediately, the chamber filled with new holographic displays showing massive construction sites hidden throughout the planet's core. Shipyards that had been building in secret for 200 years, powered by automated systems that had never stopped working. They knew this day would come, Zephyr explained through Marcus. My people prepared for their children to return home. They built ships, weapons, everything we would need to reclaim our birthright. The displays showed sleek vessels unlike anything in known space, their hulls incorporating both Draknari crystal technology and modern improvements developed during centuries of automated research. They were beautiful and terrible, designed for war but crafted with the artistic sensibility that had defined Draknari culture. How many ships? Elena asked, her voice tight with excitement. 200, Marcus replied. All fully automated, all waiting for activation codes that only a living Draknari can provide. Sarah was staring at the genetic integration display with growing amazement. Marcus, the process is accelerating. The Draknari templates are ready for transfer to the ship's artificial wombs. We could have the first generation born within months instead of years. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He was no longer just carrying genetic material. He was carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire species. Through his bond with Zephyr, he could sense the personalities of the Draknari who would soon be born. Artists and scientists, warriors and philosophers, each one unique but all of them connected by the shared trauma of their people's destruction. Elena, Marcus called over the comm, get back to the ship and prepare for launch. We're going to meet the Zephyrian fleet, but not the way they expect. Are you insane? Elena replied. Even with 200 ships, we're talking about taking on the Zephyrian Empire. That's a war we can't win. We're not starting a war, Marcus said. We're ending one. The Zephyrians have spent 2 centuries believing they successfully committed genocide. It's time to show them how wrong they were. The Restoration Matrix completed its work with a pulse of energy that Marcus felt in every cell of his body. He was still human, but now he was something more. A bridge between species, a guardian of lost hopes, a living proof that extinction didn't have to be permanent. Zephyr landed on his shoulder, and Marcus felt their bond deepen beyond anything he'd imagined possible. They were no longer just human and Draknari. They were something new, a partnership that represented the future both species could share. The fleet activation codes, Zephyr said, its mental voice filled with ancient authority. I can provide them now. Marcus placed his hand on the pillar again, and this time he felt his consciousness expand beyond the library, beyond the planet, reaching out to touch systems that had waited centuries for this moment. Across the dead world, massive hangar doors began to open. Ships that had existed only in potential began to stir to life, their crystal cores igniting with blue fire. Parker was downloading the activation sequence onto portable drives. This is the most important archaeological discovery in human history. Even if we don't survive the next few hours, this data has to reach Earth. We're all going to survive, Marcus said with absolute certainty. This isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. Elena's ship lifted off from the surface just as the first Draknari vessel emerged from its hidden hangar. The ship was a work of art, its crystalline hull flowing like liquid starlight, its wings spread wide as if it were a living creature taking flight. More ships followed, rising from concealed bays across the planet's surface until the sky was filled with the reborn fleet of the Draknari. By all the stars, Elena whispered over the comm, they're beautiful. The Zephyrian battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace right on schedule, their massive warships bristling with weapons designed to glass planets. But as they approached the dead world they expected to find defenseless, they instead encountered something that sent shockwaves through their command structure. The Draknari were home. Admiral Vex, The same Zephyrian who had searched Marcus's shop months earlier appeared on the communication screen. His pale green face was twisted with rage and disbelief. "This is impossible," he snarled. "The Draknari are extinct. We made certain of that." "You made certain of nothing," Marcus replied, his voice carried across space by the library's communication systems. "You destroyed their bodies, but their souls endured. And now they've returned to reclaim what you stole." "One human and a stolen research subject cannot command a fleet," Vex said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "I am Zephyr, last of the Draknari, first of the reborn," Zephyr spoke, its words translated and broadcast across all frequencies. "You will withdraw from our space, or you will join your victims in extinction." The Draknari fleet moved with precision that bordered on telepathy, surrounding the Zephyrian ships in a formation that was both beautiful and deadly, their weapons powered up, crystal arrays that could tear through space-time itself. "You cannot hope to defeat the entire Empire," Vex said, but his bluster was hollow now. "We don't need to defeat the Empire," Marcus replied. "We just need to show the galaxy that genocide has consequences, that the dead can return. That hope is stronger than hate." For a long moment, the two fleets faced each other across the void. Then one by one, the Zephyrian ships began to withdraw. They had come expecting to face an archaeological expedition. Instead, they had found an entire species returning from the grave. As the Zephyrian fleet jumped back into hyperspace, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. His bond with Zephyr was now permanent and perfect, a connection that transcended species barriers. Through that bond, he could sense the Draknari children growing in the ship's artificial wombs, each one carrying the memories and dreams of their ancestors. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of New Draknaris, the space station that had been built in orbit around the restored homeworld. Below him, the planet was green again, its cities rebuilt with crystal spires that sang in harmony with the solar winds. The first generation of reborn Draknari were already taking their places as artists, scientists, and explorers. Sarah had established a research center where humans and Draknari worked together to unlock the secrets of genetic restoration. Dozens of extinct species had been brought back from preserved genetic material, turning New Draknaris into an ark for the galaxy's lost children. Elena commanded a joint human-Draknari fleet that protected refugee populations across the galaxy, carrying the message that extinction was no longer permanent, that hope could triumph over despair. And Marcus, still human but enhanced by his bond with Zephyr, had become something unprecedented, an ambassador between species, a living bridge that proved different forms of life could not just coexist but thrive together. "Friendheart," Zephyr said, now grown to the size of a small horse, but still preferring to perch on Marcus's shoulders during quiet moments. "Do you ever regret the choice we made?" Marcus looked out at the thriving world below, where human children played alongside young Draknari in parks that sparkled with bioluminescent flowers. In the distance, research ships were departing for distant galaxies, carrying the gift of restoration to worlds that had thought hope was lost forever. "Never," Marcus said, reaching up to stroke Zephyr's scales. "We found something better than either of us could have achieved alone."